Would you believe that I went through hundreds, if not many, many takes just to try and get this intro right? No sense of weighing about it. Hi, Cole Beekner, infamous person you're just watching online, here to give you my Avengers Season 4, my most plot heavy, significant, and something I'm really hoping I can get through without a lot of people. Yeah, without a lot of baggage. So, let me start off with the first third, because this is going to be like a major setup for later on. When we first start, the Avengers have been very publicly scrutinized, along with a majority of heroes that we will occasionally get references, and sometimes it might make a cameo and like a background shot. Still working out that kind of detail. So, our heroes have been hated on because, well, they failed to save a lot of people during the events of like Kang and Ultron and a lot of other a lot of other shit that happened in between the series, from the X-Men to the Spider-Man to the Fantastic Four. They did save the planet, but that doesn't change the fact that a lot of people did die. And like a lot of people, they're stupid and are blaming the heroes rather than actual villains. The government is being forced to comply with the infamous Superhero Registration Act, essentially an act where the entire Earth, or essentially the United States at most, has to get the superheroes to give up their identity, what their powers are, and just reveal a whole lot. And if the government wants something from them, like say if Iron Man did it and they wanted a piece of their armors, he is under government obligation to do so, and he cannot say no. Yeah, this is gonna be fun. So, when this act is being pressed, Nick Fury of S.H.I.E.L.D. is currently a little busy with some of the Avengers in going to the country of Latveria. One of its senators has been selling a lot of high-tech technology to a lot of B-tier to C-tier supervillains, and Fury couldn't do anything about it, but wants to do something about it. So he takes that group. I was thinking of Cap, Iron Man, maybe not Thor, Hawkeye, Quicksilver, Black Panther, or Vision, and now that's about it. To the country and take it over. Eventually, they're joined up by Thor, who comes in at the last minute, only to reveal that he kind of needs to go into space for a little while. It's not, again, not that big of a deal. So eventually, they find a senator, and it's unfortunately revealed, not to comic book fans, but to most people who are not aware, Doctor Doom is the leader of Latveria. Now, for those of you who are prepared, you can see where this is going. Doom does not want to take over the world as most people would believe he will be. At least, and what he says. He just thinks he's the only person that's good enough to actually save it. And actually, if you read some of the comics and a lot of different issues, he's actually right. It's twisted. But it's also, I also want to imply that, like in the comics, Doom may or may not be the ancestor to Kang, if I didn't spell that out earlier, but it's not that important. Essentially, the senator is no longer permitted outside of Latveria. The technology is returned since Doom never really authorized it. And the heroes are going back now with political baggage. Now, Nick Fury is giving a lot more character. You could say he's like one of the major characters in this season. Okay. This is the beginning of a long road. Okay. When we continue on with the series prior, we unfortunately get a lot of the Superhuman Registration Act being partially signed, but not really. It's sort of like the same political conflict you would see in the Sokovia Accords and Avenger Captain America Civil War or Avengers 2.5. Uh, but it's not really taken into full effect. Cap is against it, main along with most of the other heroes, including Iron Man, because well, what's to stop the government from abusing this right and act? And Cap even takes this up with the president, who he wants to talk to about this whole situation and wants to try and reason some way of getting this bill not at least vetoed, not signed. Uh, but then that all backfires with Nitro, a lesser villain in the long run. His main power is that he can literally blow himself up and then reform his body. But and Iron Man has taken on this guy before, at least in a one-off episode. He has revealed and has openly worked with Shield to discover a way to stop Nitro. Well, not discover, he already knows. Nitro's literal power is to blow up, so you have him keep blowing up until he gets tired. No, really, that is actually, according to Iron Man, that is literally one of the only ways you can actually beat the guy. But then something happens and Nitro is steered off course. He now goes into this whole area of sorts, and he blows up a gas leak, basically recreating a nuclear explosion without the radiation in Cleveland. This now gets the Superhuman Registration Act fully signed, with Iron Man joining up, also with public peer pressure. The Avengers are now getting split right down the middle. Some agree with the law, but some do not. And Iron Man and Cap are just the more vocal of the group. Especially when they discover that the government wants the Avengers to go to Russia in order to take down the Red Room. The Red Room in this universe was a Soviet experiment to train specific assassins, sort of like their equivalent of a human Manhattan Project, if you Americans are aware. Essentially, since the Soviet Union fell, what's left of the Red Room is still being run active by corrupt Russian senators. So then they basically train those assassins, discovering one person in there who's a little defective, according to them. Natasha Romanoff, also we know as the Black Widow. Also, I want to add this sort of thing like in the comics where when you first meet her, she's actually has black hair, but then what later on throughout her hero and becoming more and more like the hero we know it, she dyes the whole thing red and kind of likes to like hang out. I do want to get into her a little bit more later. But essentially, she wants to go find her brother, who has been unfortunately transformed into another version of the Crimson Dynamo. Again, a part of the Red Room brainwashing. So the Avengers decide to find Natasha and help her out, since the government actually wants to, off it. But unfortunately, they run into a problem. They come across Taskmaster. Now, believe it or not, unlike the movies, Taskmaster here is just... well, he's a bit of an egotistical loudmouth. Yeah, you thought Deadpool talked smack a lot. Taskmaster won't shut up. But the problem is, his ego actually comes from a point that he can physically watch anyone's fighting style once, perfectly replicated, and then create the perfect countermeasure to beating those said heroes. Now, I know what you're thinking. How do you beat this guy? And the truth is, they don't. He has openly taken down Black Widow, Hawkeye, and Cap in hand to hand combat in one sitting. And Widow was one of their more better pupils. Not one of their best, but one of their better. You can see how bad this is going if you know anything about him. And unlike the movie where he's just only copying, based it down on the weapons. No. He is actually copying physical hand-to-hand movement instead of just minor character movements. Listen, for the sake of the movie, I don't hate that they changed him to a her. I don't care. I don't care if they made him a silent or stoic. That's been happening a lot. I do not care. What I do care about is that you actually get the damn power system right. He is a mutant. Essentially a mutant. Yeah, I might have to double refresh myself on that one. So, when the Avengers have been ordered to kill Natasha, they actually don't. And Captain goes to the president and asking what the hell is going on. And that's when it's ultimately revealed. Cap knew the president since World War II. He's just living under a disguise. And Cap now goes rogue. Apparently, while all this was happening, Shield has officially fired Nick Fury and replaced him with his right-hand woman, Maria Hill. Fury has always been, according to Maria, Nick was always so lenient on these heroes because they were doing they were doing his job and doing much better work with him. Also out of personal perfect. But Maria, she doesn't actually hate heroes per se. Actually, she fully appreciates them actually doing their jobs and actually helping them out from time to time. She just wants them to work directly for the government. Yes, it's the limiting benefactor, and she does understand where they're coming from and does want to help, but this is her way of helping. Well, Nick goes rogue instead and decides to reveal to most of the Avengers of what Cap has discovered. But they need to physically get proof of who this president really is. Now, comic book fans will know it, but I want to save this up for much, much later. Okay, now we get to the more bread and potatoes of what I want to do for this second third. Now we get to introduce as many characters as I'm gonna like. Okay, I'm not gonna introduce too many, but I want to at least pick and choose what I want to bring in, when I want to bring in. Because now I'm entering the 1970s and the 1980s level of the Avengers. I am only interested in a few of them, the rest will get name dropped. So, let's discuss. Our heroes are now on the run. Iron Man is left to rebuild what's left of the Avengers. Now, he was informed by the government to add in Carol Danvers, also known as Miss Marvel, or Captain Marvel, or Prodigy, or Warbird, or... Yeah, she has a lot of names. Honestly, as a character, Captain Marvel, or at least Carol Danvers in of itself, doesn't really have a lot going on for her to basically be adapted into a story, or at least stuff that hasn't been adapted better in different storylines. So she's kind of a more blank character. Again, this is at no, I'm not taking any, this is at no fault for any of the writers. It's just, we barely have anything to work with for her. even in the movies or the shows or anything like that. All we do know is that in the comics, she was close friends with Captain Marvel. He was a member of an alien empire called the Kree, who had previously come to the planet of Earth to see if their people could be used for potential war effort against their civil war with a race called the Skrulls, who were equally as ruthless as them, unlike the movies. Now, for the record, I know you can hear background noise. That's just someone else living nearby. Marvel basically protected Carol from an explosion, accidentally passed on his genetics, which makes her technically an inhuman, a race of human hybrids with Kree. That I do want to expand more on the Kree and the Skrulls and all that stuff later on in like the Fantastic Four series, but you're basically going to get the general terms. The Kree themselves are an infamous empire that took over an entire satellite galaxy, which is by far very impressive because go ahead and look up how big a satellite galaxy and how many planets and star systems will be in it, and you would actually be impressed. The Kree themselves want to basically are a military who just wants to protect their people and ensure their genetic purity. Not for culling or experimentation, and they just want to basically ensure that their children are directly full-blooded Kree. It's like a weird religious sort of thing for them. It's a whole thing. And I'm getting too much in detail for that. Anyway, essentially, Carol here works for the United States Air Force, and she believes in following most of the rules in promulgation. You can see where her character arc is going to go from there. Natasha has unfortunately also disappeared. This basically is trying to say that she really doesn't know what to do with her life since her entire life is revolved around the Red Room, and she just follows around with the Avengers, or at least the ones that went rogue with Cap, which essentially consisted of the entire Kooky Quartet, Wasp, Hercules, and who have unfortunately went to the country of Wakanda, who has taken them on in Sanctuary. So take that. This doesn't leave much for the Earth heroes still there, who Iron Man is now opening a training regimen for heroes like Jack of Heart. Not going well. So, anyway, while going through space, and all around, Thor actually had to go someplace else in order to figure out some things. He had been feeling this strange power since Ultron basically defeated him. Well, that and Ultron kind of nearly kicked his butt and sent him into space, but he started seeing something. That's when he came across the infamous Annihilation Wave. Now, Annihilus, an insect, is another Fantastic Four major antagonist, but for his understanding's sake, he's an insectoid ruler from a alternate dimension called the Negative Zone, which if anyone stepped inside of it from our dimension, we would experience shit tons of emotional trauma instantaneously. And their insectoid had essentially mutated to the point where they became an invading force and tried to sense a race of lion people experimenting on them. Because comics. Essentially, Annihilus, the leader in the Annihilation Wave, led the charge with his entire army from the Negative Zone to the Kree and the Skrulls. Meanwhile, the reason Thor went into space is to find out what was left of Ultron's original programming, who has now been integrated into a techno-organic race called the Phalanx, who now take control, who Ultron takes over, and then they eventually go into war with Annihilus's group. This is my combination of the of the comic storyline Annihilation and Annihilation Conquest. This is going to be fun. So, there are some other lesser characters that do make brief appearances and still play major roles. We have our said the Guardians of the Galaxy, which is heavily implied that there was an original version that's going to be set off based on humans who have evolved on separate planets in the far future that have not been created yet. So this will be the original. And it's consisting of some of the people you know and some of the people you don't know. Star-Lord, Peter Quill, half-human son of the king of the planet Spartax, who that said prince went rogue to work off some time, has a series of guns that can switch off into different elements. Rocket Raccoon, an experiment from the Kree whole half-world where he witnessed the death of his close friends and eventually eventually got taken to a different planet where he basically acted as a mercenary for a while. Groot, the last Flora Colossus from the planet called X, and unlike the movies, can speak full sentences, is like his original appearance, and is also implied to also be the prince. Again, like the comics. Drax the Destroyer. He's a Klendathu who had his wife and daughter murdered, but it's also heavily implied that he, like in the comics, was actually human, who was unfortunately killed in a random skirmish between Thanos and the War Universe, and unfortunately was reborn into not a Klendathu, but definitely Klendathu. I'm not going to do the whole thing where he becomes a cyborg and gets his intelligence reduced down to that of a baby, because that was just dumb. But that heavy implication comes from Moondragon, a human psychic who is connected to a cosmic literal space dragon, who is also heavily implied to be Drax's human form's daughter. Kind of weird how the same tragedy happened twice. Huh? Then there comes Gamora, adopted daughter of Thanos, eventually left. Also the adopted sister of Thanos' niece. Nebula. That's, again, a whole complicated stuff I want to get into. I don't want to go into Thanos now, but no, he's not the final villain. But he will appear in this season. I can guarantee you that. Gamora just kind of is along the lines and living with Adam Warlock. Now, if you paid attention to other storylines I discussed, Adam Warlock was created by humans and then went into space after battling Thor for a little while to discover who he really was. Eventually, he found the High Evolutionary, a cosmic figure who basically studies other life forms and goes through this whole thing where he wants to create his own perfect life, but then is willing to exterminate others for that said power. Essentially, Adam becomes his unintentional son and gets a soul stone embedded into his head. Yeah, try ripping that one off in the MCU vision. It's also implied that Adam has two other personalities, the Magus and the Goddess, both of which want to save the Goddess or destroy the Magus. But they both are insane enough to believe that genocide is the only option. So there has to be some part of his old programming, and the Soul Stone basically keeps both of them intact. But he goes through this whole rebirthing cycle. It's not that important. Who else was I going to pick? Oh, yes. Humans connected to other ancient cosmic gods, like Quasar, who he might have a thing for Moondragon. It's another complicated thing, but I don't want to go into that one with too much detail. And then the introduction of Captain Universe, human conduit to the Uniforce. Another powerful cosmic seed, Trust me, there is a lot of cosmic things that are going to be involved in this section. Um, the last person I definitely want to introduce, for the sake of this Guardians of the Galaxy, is definitely Darkhawk. He's a human. He unintentionally got his brain implanted with a Darkhawk android, and essentially now goes around saving people in the space. He's now fully in control of this original war machine, and then encounters Mantis slightly. She's, unlike the movies, is more of a capable fighter, and and she isn't just mind reading and easing. She can also has a lot of different fighting styles and mental powers that I do not want to get into too much detail because that would overload a lot of our senses. Thor teams up with these Guardians, and then they go round. They officially form. Mantis doesn't, since she's actually like the celestial mandala of a planet of pacifist Kree, who believe that she will give birth to their equivalent of the Messiah. Yes, that is from the comics. Yes, that did happen for a while with her husband, Swordsman, who I want to imply is actually on the planet. Well, actually, not imply, absolutely show that that's what happened to him later when Mantis originally crash landed to the planet of Earth and was hostile for a little while. But Thor also discovers something else before he returns. He then meets up with a few other cosmic beings that show up there, like the Galactus Herald, Silver Surfer, and Fire Lord, Beta Ray Bill, who gets a return, Ronan the Accuser, but is depicted more as the general of the Kree army, the Super Skrull, a Skrull super soldier that has the powers of all the members of the Fantastic Four, minusing Invisible Woman's force shield, but actually has laser eyes. Again, I want to go into more details about the Skrulls later, but they're going to play a major part in this because according to their homeworld, Galactus has fully devoured everything in their system as a result. So, yeah. Fun times all around. So that was Thor's miniature arc. I am going to skip a little bit of this so we can move on. Meanwhile, on Earth, the whole universe has essentially gotten everything that they wanted. Every inhabitant had gotten what they needed. This is unfortunately undiscovered by the magician Dr. Druid, who I will go into more detail later. But essentially, if you want a more Doctor Strange-centric story where you'll go into more of his backstory, but you still get the bare cliff notes, essentially he's a psychic monster hunter who was originally trained by the Ancient One to take over as Sorcerer Supreme if Doctor Strange couldn't defeat many of the other mystical threats that would face him, including the main antagonist of that season, Nightmare, a dream demon I want to go into more later. Essentially, Strange pulled it off, and Drew just kind of wanders around for a bit. But his powers have allowed him to essentially see that the Scarlet Witch has done all this. See, her hex powers create everything that wouldn't work out for everyone else but for her. But instead, she wants everything to just be somewhat normal, that she didn't have to feel like that she would be on the run every so often. Again, this is why I saved her off for much later. And I kind of wanted Druid to emphasize more of his psychiatrist. I know it's not a therapist, but he kind of would be the only person that actually helped Wanda achieve some form of mental baggage. Because she kind of created a version of Earth where everyone got what they wanted. It's like the full extent. It's like her mutant power has evolved to the point of accessing more advanced forms of dark magic, which I think would be hinted at in Doctor Strange's season 1. So yes, I did want to build up a lot of this shit as so. But essentially, this is my brief take of the infamous House of M. And no, it's not ending with Wanda taking away the powers of the mutants. I'm crazy, but I'm not that crazy. So anyway, we get what they wanted. Druid convinces Wanda to call this off, and everything goes back to normal. And Druid will join up, but that's like in the second half and shit. And we're just here. But we also want to cut back to Fury. He's recently going over and working with Mockingbird, a SHIELD agent, and who essentially one of Fury's closest agents and personally specialized in combat training. I do kind of want to reveal something that Fury actually kind of doesn't want to bring her out of retirement because, well, because I want to go over a little bit more about Fury's history and showing his more ruthless side, and that being the reason why Mockingbird left. But he then reveals that he's been researching a lot of different that the Skrulls have been secretly infiltrating the Earth with an infamous Hydra agent defeated. Now, that said, Hydra agent is revealed to be technically Madame Hydra from... Well, the name should be obvious. It's so hard to breathe. 1 second. Okay. So, I guess there are some stuff that is not that complicated, but I don't want to go into so much detail about it. But in another flashback episode that would be happening along with Fury, revealing how he and Cap have become, how he's changed now to how he is today, helped Cap in defeating this Hydra base, which he believed would be in direct correlation. He's discovered that this group called the Cabal have essentially which is essentially a group of some of the more influential supervillains of the whole Marvel universe, or sort of like MODOK's AIM, Hydra. It's hinted at that other villains like the Hellfire Club from the X-Men or the Friends of Humanity, technically, that storyline, or members of the Maggia crime families like Silvermane or Hammerhead from Spider-Man stories, all are colliding, working together in order to basically, you guessed it, take over the world. Because of course. If you've seen the Nostalgia Critic, you would get that reference. So, anyway, when all that was happening, Cap helps the soldier Sam Wilson, who unfortunately was left behind during this whole horrible confrontation, and actually becomes close friends with Cap, becoming the temporary hero we know today as Falcon, who, yes, is employed by the US government and wants to actually... And he's also kind of implied that I don't want to say it, but he's at the point where he's psychic to his pet bird, Redwing, who he actually got injured and captured trying to save him, which is how they met. I actually do want to show Sam Wilson's ascension into becoming the Falcon, because he's agreed to also be a part of this United States authorized version of the Avengers, which unfortunately have not been going really well. Iron Man and Maria Hill agree that something is very clearly wrong because, well, everything was working to plan, but Nitro somehow knew that was a diversion on his end, and they both want to work on figuring out what the hell happened. So, and you can tell it's the Cabal, but I want to get into more of them later. Now, who's ready for fun? Oh, I'm ready for fun. Okay. So, anyway, during all these events that have been leading up to it's eventually revealed that this is a brief adaptation of Secret Invasion. But we're getting at least one more miniature arc that has nothing to do with all this, just to introduce another character. Hellcat. Hellcat essentially is her husband unfortunately was killed. She took up a genetic insertion to try and make her superpowered in order to avenge him, and you go with Hawkeye for a little while because this is something I want to do for Hawkeye himself. Through this at least most of the series up to this point in the halfway by the halfway mark anyway, he's proving himself to be a capable leader, and I want to actually show that. So anyway, Clint then works with Hellcat, whose mutation starts turning her into more of a literal cat and becomes the hero in Hydra, like in the comics, to eventually stopping the drug runners, or not drug runners, uh, her husband's killers. Yeah, yeah, that's all I got for a brief bit. So anyway, it's then the Secret Invasion. Now, you might be wondering, wait, really? And for the record, in the comics, it is a major worldwide issue where it's essentially the Skrulls have taken over and replaced most of the major members in politics, cabinets, even the Cabal. Most of the Cabal's members are actually revealed to be Skrulls, and it's just. But thankfully, it's most of the leaders that the Skrull actually fears, so he then kills them, and then those Skrulls. Wait. Where it's essentially that the Skrulls have taken over and replaced a majority of the heroes, villains, basically anyone who will eventually rat them out, and then planned whole assassination trips. They even went as far as to using these devices that allow them to perfectly replicate a human's memories, thoughts, and experiences, so that way nothing would be out of the ordinary. But they can replicate everything but its actual experience because it's a replica. They can't do the crazy stuff the originals can. And that is what defeats them in the end. Okay. And yes, you might be wondering, why is all of this important? Well, it is important. The president kills all the members that are revealed to be Skrulls, which then is revealed to be a majority of the major members in the Cabal, but now there's barely anyone left. So you might be thinking to yourself, what the hell did it matter? Because the president had to work in this weird table in order to, with all these people, to essentially control everything, gain their majority vote. But now that it's revealed that they were all Skrulls, and he essentially, on live public television, kills the queen, who I want to reveal was actually the original, was Mockingbird, actually, like in the comics. But then she ultimately the original one breaks out of prison, and eventually and then eventually kicks the ass of the queen before the president kills him, making all the low-life members of the Cabal fully loyal to the said president. And now you're getting your head on why I included them. But this now reveals that the public is not exactly ready for all the heroes to split up. So, the Avengers are back together for this season. Yay! High fives claps all around. But the government keeps Carol and Sam into the group. Sam doesn't really actually want to work with the government itself because even he acknowledges some of their bullshit, but he does agree to act as a miniature spy for Cap. Again, I don't really have a lot going on for Sam as a character, and I do apologize for any major fans of both Captain Marvel and Sam. I just really want to keep this going. But yes. So, that's the end of that halfway point. So now the Superhuman Registration Act now fully incorporates with the Avengers. But they were told that Hawkeye was now going to have to lead a separate group of the Avengers, the essentially adaptation of the 1980 storyline, The West Coast Avengers. which actually did last for its own issues for a little while. Now it's actually a really fun time. Hawkeye then leaves with Hank. Well, not Wasp. She actually stays up with them. But Hawkeye then takes the Scarlet Witch, who wants to study more, understand more of her powers from the long run. On Tigra and Mockingbird, and eventually two more heroes that are formed. You see, during the events of the Secret War, there's two major heroes are now reintroduced: Wonder Man and War Machine. War Machine, or James Rhodey Rhodes, James Rhodes, or Rhodey, was actually a close friend of Iron Man during the infamous War Zones, that Tony was a part of. Essentially, Tony's ass got saved from the fire thanks by Rhodey, so he built him his own Iron Man suit in order to protect him, and as a form of gratitude. But he actively denied it. But seeing as how the whole secret invasion thing got out of hand, he eventually put on the War Machine armor and eventually now joined up with the group especially the West Coast Avengers, to essentially keep some form of government under check, but never actually openly worked for the government as well. The other character, Wonder Man, was created by the Scarlet Witch when she accidentally reassembled all the molecules because of her powers. As I was showing, it is technically universe bending. So Simon Williams has returned. Now, I actually do want to get into more of his redemption, as he is now becoming a big advocate in the comics, to try and convince the villains to reform and change. That is also getting to the use of the fact as mental state was copied into Vision, which I actually want to go into a little bit more later. And then his actual brother, who's become the insane supervillain, the Grim Reaper. Or maybe he already was. I'm sorry, it's been a while. So then the two. So that's what I want to do with him. War Machine, I actually do want to develop it, like in the comics, his romantic interest with Carol. Again, still trying to give him some stuff to do. Falcon, on the other hand, I think I should give him at least a lot more to do. But I also want to delve into more of his connection to Red Wing and actually showing his innate responsibility for what happens beyond this point. Because I want to just. There's a lot I really want to do for this season, if you can't tell. Oh. Okay. So, for the second half, I want to focus on a few of the 80s Avengers. Not doing it overly so, but giving a lot of different stuff more time to grow. Give our 70s group more opportunities and revealing a bit more. Like, for starters, I don't Mockingbird and Hawkeye having a bit of romantic tensions, and I actually do want to show them getting married at one point. I actually have Vision leave to join up with the West Coast for a little while. Well, that's like a whole thing. And I do want to get into at some point, like, because that is important for Simon Williams' character development. What else did I have? I guess I don't really have that much to go off of. So, okay, let's do it. Here is, with Thor's return to the planet, now the Avengers are kind of a little low on a lot of manpower. It especially becomes a big, giant pain in the butt when it eventually is revealed that Hulk does return. Now he has openly declared war on the planet for everything that happened. The adaptation of World War Hulk. But I do want to reveal something. You could try and reason with Banner, as Druid and Strange kind of try to do, since this is bringing in a lot of other heroes into more prominent roles. Since Mr. Fantastic and Iron Man and Strange had a major roles in bringing the Hulk into space. It's revealed that the Hulk's wife actually had accepted them both, Bruce and Hulk, as their own person, and of the same one she fell in love with. So, in essence, Bruce Banner is just as pissed as the Hulk is, and there is nothing you can do to stop him. So, have fun with that. And yes, for the record, they don't really kill each other. The Hulk just makes them understand. Hulk makes them all understand with the war bound of everything that happened on Sakaar, makes him understand how he felt, and then returns to Earth, returns to space to spend time with his unfortunate to Sakaar, where he discovers that his son, basically Scar, has been reborn, or thanks to his life giving blood to the planet's soil. Yeah, that's all I really wanted to do with Hulk. I just wanted to give them, both him and Bruce, some time to actually develop it, and I'm never going to be touching the Hulk again beyond that point, because I'm happy where I put him. You can sue me, you can hate it, but you don't have to dislike it either. Okay. Okay. Let's get into more power. Okay. There are some minor characters I did want to introduce. Druid does openly join up with the event with the actual Avengers, and I kind of developed this bit of an inferiority complex a little bit because, well, he isn't really that well remembered, and actually is considered one of the weaker characters in like Marvel comics in general. So I kind of want to delve into that a bit more and give him more of a character, make him fun, but also emphasize his mental talents, especially with his brief rivalry with Photon, a human. Monica Rambeau, unlike the movies, has no previous connection to Carol Danvers, but unfortunately was involved in the same in an accident similar to what happened to her. But now her body shifts into fade and out into from light in spectral forms, where she takes up the name Photon. Basically, she actually learns to gain a bit more control over her powers, and that's kind of it for her character. I mean, that is why she was a part of the Avengers for a very long while, and her brief rivalry with Dr. Druid, which, unlike the comics, is not based on racism. If you look up the characters, you'll figure out why. But, or sexism. But I actually just want to develop them having a bit of a friendly rivalry here and there, just trying to see which one of their powers is honestly much cooler than the other. I think that's something I want to do. Yeah, no, that's something I want to do. The last two characters I would like to introduce, at least for this season anyway, I want to introduce Star Fox and the infamous Infinity Gauntlet Wars Gauntlets and Infinity Gauntlet storylines from the comics, unlike their movie adaptation. Thanos wants to impress Death, as revealed. Death in this universe is actually a female, and Thanos went insane. Actually, it's kind of hinted at that he's actually an Eternal, but was born with a deviant gene, which despite his immense power of an Eternal, he kind of looks like the way he does. Like, if you saw the movie, you know what he looks like. So anyway, Thanos then travels to the planet, travels around the universe, looking for the elders of the universe. Basically, they're like the last survivors of their own species and planetary extinction. And so they were given cosmic powers and immortality. The Collector, The Grandmaster, the Guardian of the Universe, the In-Betweener, the Runner, and the Gardener have each a member of the six Infinity Stones, which in essence could potentially, which were born at the dawn of the universe. Don't know why you didn't give that to Guardian, the Guardian of the Universe, because he technically is the most powerfulest of the group, but then again, just lumping it with one guy would probably be a bigger problem. Is Yoso considered an elder anymore? I'm getting it. Maybe that's where they're actually living. Thanos arrives on, and that's where they're living in. I'll figure that out later. Star Fox is technically Thanos' brother, basically more revealing of his Eternal's power, and wants to actually help take down Thanos once he gains the power of the six Infinity Stones and snaps his fingers. Half the universe is wiped off the face of the planet. Now you might be thinking, wait, that's it? He just does it because he's in love with death, no complex moral reason? No. Thanos is insane. That was obvious. Why do you think he's called the Mad Titan? He's insane. And death doesn't actually love him. That's the important part. He is doing all of this for someone who won't love him back. But since Star Fox basically crash landed on the planet of Earth and has accidentally involved the heroes of Earth to arrive to defeat Thanos, who unfortunately uses his powers beyond comprehension. Now, unlike the movies, I'm actually going to try and show the thousands of different effects this has had across the universe. Thor being called over to see what happened with what's left held over by Scourge to reveal, showing him many of the horror half of each planet of the nine realms basically being weakened. Beta Ray Bill, the Guardians of the Galaxy getting shit tons of distress calls coming over from all the thousands of lives that have unfortunately disappeared. You actually get to see a lot of planes crashing down, seas, satellite arrays, open businesses, people in a panic, especially on Earth, or at least their equivalents of Earth. It's just, I want to actually show this instead of just glossing it over as being a last minute change. Like, oh yeah, this happened. Let's all go on and just go on a time travel adventure. Blah, blah, blah. If you can't tell, I was not happy with the decision. I didn't hate it, but I wasn't happy with it either. That's much better. So anyway, like in Infinity War, Star Fox has brought over all these people, and then but then also goes to eternity. Basically the universe having this central consciousness and the body. Eternity is one of those major cosmic figureheads, along with other cosmic including the Elders, Galactus, is the Living Tribunal, who is essentially the judge and determines what cosmic beings allowed to do whatever in the grand scheme of the cosmos. Uatu the Watcher, the embodiments of love and hatred, and the power of the central order and chaos of the universe. A lot of different cosmic beings I want to explore. Essentially, even the Celestials arrive, and so basically Star Fox then uses that power to bring them all over in order to try and defeat Thanos. And with the power of the Infinity Stones, it's actually become a bit of a half and half match. It actually is quite impressive, and I want to actually demonstrate just showing the full power of Thanos in the long run. But to that point, Thanos, this was all part of the plan. Cap then takes the gauntlet, and they run like hell and go back. Now the Infinity Stones are returned to the Elders because of by order of the Living Tribunal, but now are given much more present security with a bunch of Celestials on standby in case one of them happens to steal it again. And yeah, Star Fox has nowhere else to go since his planet of Titan has unfortunately disappeared, so he's just living on Earth for a little while. but his advanced knowledge of scientific prowess, and he does kind of rub it in a little bit, but he's not terrible at it, and he becomes influential for the next major arc featuring Michael Korvac. Yeah, Korvac essentially was kidnapped by the Koreans at one point, or another powerful cosmic alien race, because they keep popping over to Earth. And if you can hear the mutts outside, we're just going outside. Thank you. Nothing. Korvac essentially got infused with the power of cosmic, not through Galactus's more less passive way, and went insane and wants to destroy everything he comes across. And yeah, Star Fox becomes a main influential powerhouse when it comes down to defeating Korvac because he devises a way to remove his powers after reverse engineering, showing his advanced intellect. I don't have much for him as a character, but that's something I really wanted to touch upon. The last major character I did want to introduce is Namor the Submariner. Namor himself actually has come from the kingdom of Atlantis. He had been an occasional and regular antagonistic force and friend to the Fantastic Four, but when his kingdom of Atlantis essentially kicked him out for basically being a half human, half Atlantean, but also one of the earliest signs of being a mutant because, well, and like his little bird wings on his feet, bird feet, yeah, bird feet. But his control was impressive. I wanted to reveal that in the Fantastic Four that the General Atuma eventually took over the Atlantean people and declared war from the sea, and Namor worked with the Fantastic Four in order to defeat Atuma. But his people absolutely despised him, and Namor was eternally banished. This cuts to now, where Namor is reconnected with Cap, who actually reveals that Namor and him actually worked in World War II. Because as apparently Namor has been around since the 1920s. Atlantean physiology, you know? He actually does get into a friendly grudge match with Hercules for a little while of a contest of strength, and that basically gave Namor, because it was like for Herc, it gave Namor something to live for, something to strive for, something to live in, and I feel like that's really interesting. So he now fully joins the Avengers, but is a little hard when it comes to first working with other people, and I do want to develop that a bit more, but yeah, I kind of like it. Besides, it gives me an excuse in the finale for him to unleash a humanoid whale hybrid whose nuzzle can take on the explosion of a nuke. Yes, that did happen in the comics. Yes, that was the best and funniest thing I have ever seen. And yes, you are going to enjoy it for all of its glory and all of its unintentional badass. So anyway, that's all I wanted. Back to the major plot storylines. Oh wait, no, yeah, that's all this is. Finding your place. And that's when Fury finally completes a brief character arc where he eventually now has to trust with him and Maria to work together to figure out who revealed to the public, and at least figure out for Maria, but reveal who to the public, like, who the president is. But then it gathers his own miniature version of the Masters of Evil, basically consisting of Baron Zemo's descendant, Baron on Helmet Zemo, the super, and a lot of other various supervillains from out the series history to basically act as a wage war against the Avengers Mansion and overwhelm them. Like a strategic man. But this isn't. But then coming in from the last minute of the West Coast Avengers, including Ant-Man's brief return. Now, this is then revealed with the Fury coming in and taking on the president one on one, since most of his superhero, since he had by that point replaced Shield with a different organization called Hammer, made up of several security agents employed by the Cabal. And now he reveals the truth. The president was Red Skull. That's right, like in the comics, Red Skull disguised himself as the president in order to weaken and defeat, take over the world. Because, well, he's been a Nazi, he's been around. Well, no, not just being a Nazi. But he actually does do, unlike the Nazis, he actually does accomplish something, and he actually gets close to getting what he wants, unlike Hitler. Yeah. I kind of want to do things like in the comics where Fury and Skull were basically one and the same person, but I haven't figured that much out yet. Eventually, there's a brief fist fight between Fury and Skull. All the West Coast essentially saved the Avengers from almost instant defeat, and yeah, the Superhuman Registration Act is almost taken off if it wasn't for the event, but the heroes are given a lot more leeway. And Shield is reinstated with Fury and Hill both running it together. Yeah, that's season 4. As you can very clearly tell, this was a long one, and I'm now trying out a new editing software in order to see how this goes. I hope you like it, and I hope I'll see you all in the future. Bye, guys, for season 5. See you then.